So, welcome back, guys. Welcome to our home here at the dining room table with a view of the living room behind us. Probably going to be moving around the house as we do these episodes. So, with this next episode that we are recording, attempting for the third time, we started off by trying to tell our story of how we ended up in Spain.
We did.
So, for those of you that don't know, our entire family has moved to Spain or built our new home base in Spain. And I don't think that was mentioned in the last episode. And if it was just very brief.
Yeah.
But we tried telling the story from start to finish. And although it's an interesting story, we managed to make it sound incredibly boring twice. I think storytelling skills where you're just reeling off a chain of events with obstacles and whatnot is quite a talent which we don't yet have at this point. We don't have first one, we both just sat there and went, that was terrible. That was not good. We were both like, as we were going through it, I was thinking, this is rubbish, I wonder what they think. And it wasn't great. Mm-hmm. And then the second one
also was not great. Mm-hmm. It was really boring, which is such a shame because it's a really exciting story. But yeah, like you said, we just
it's hard to tell a story that's just chain of events, particularly when it's all about the obstacles of moving to Spain. I feel like the majority of people that would be interested in that are just people that are moving
and maybe
to Spain.
Trying to do the same thing, which is going to be pretty limited, isn't it? So massive obstacles, lots of stuff we didn't know, mainly financial, which we won't go into, but it is probably worth saying there are a couple of things I think that do make our journey to Spain a bit more unique and a bit more interesting, right?
But our whole family is in Spain.
Yeah.
There's only 4 of us though, it's not a big family. Just 4 of us, soon to be 5 when my soon to be wife joins us.
And 2 minutes
on
January
the 11th, and 2 dogs. You can see one.
Maybe.
Just if you're watching, you can see him. I think he's just down there.
He's definitely the cutest member of the family, isn't he?
Yeah. Jasper, he's 4 and a bit months old.
Yeah. But as I was saying to you the other day, Jordan, I think I don't know anyone at all who has moved to Spain with 2 adult sons. Everyone I've spoken to at my stage in life who's here has said, oh my goodness, you're joking. You mean your sons have actually come with you? They wanted to come with you, what, at 21 and 25? What the heck? And they're all having to go back to England regularly to see their family. And some of them aren't even here full time because of that. They spend a few months in each place. So why did you come with us?
I think just before you asked the question about would you be open to moving to Spain, my kind of thinking switched around a lot. I was really ready to move out. I was looking to move out. I wanted to be independent. And just kind of hit me. I was like, why do I want to do that? Why do I want to take on my own rent and just waste money? Or why do I want to take on my own mortgage and just pay loads of interest? When I was like, actually, the family that we have, if we're able to combine everything that we have, what we could have together is so much better than what we could have separately.
Yeah. And
so when you talked about moving to Spain, and I started researching the idea and seeing what you could get with the money that we had collectively, and then pooling our income while we're out here, I was like, well, we could do something pretty incredible. And so what we've been able to do here is I have a wing of the house over there, and we've built another wing which is going to be used as a guest apartment. But Ethan will be able to use that, who's my brother, in the future if him and his wife want to live there. They're plenty big to host people.
Not that he's got a wife yet.
He doesn't. He doesn't even have a girlfriend. He's single. So any ladies, if you watch it and like him, drop us an email.
He's going to kill me for saying that.
Oops.
He's not here. You'll meet him later.
Yeah, and you'll hear his story later. But anyway, me and Jesse have a space over there which is great. It's got a nice big bedroom, ensuite. And why are you laughing? Why are you laughing?
It was just a comment about a nice big bedroom. It's okay.
It's a soundproof bedroom as well.
Yeah,
it's a soundproof bedroom. I felt like that's where your mind went.
Well, there might be people out there going, why would a newly married couple live right behind the living room door of their parents?
Yes, well, it's very soundproof. That it was built on an exterior wall, so you can't hear much through it, luckily. And we have a nice living area. With a kitchen that we'll install when Jessie comes out. So it's got everything that we need to have as a home base. We don't know if we'll be living here permanently or kind of dipping out for months at a time, but if we do want to live here, it's a great option.
Yeah. And Ethan also really felt drawn to Spain, but we will let you tell his side of the story when he's out.
Yeah.
And I guess the other thing was the spiritual side of coming here, in that we had we'd call them promises of God from like 11 years ago. Christians would call them prophetic words, which definitely had not been fulfilled in our life, had they? And they were to do with moving overseas, a really swift, sudden move that would thrill our hearts. And we started to realise or think at the beginning of this year, maybe now is the time. And they were really exciting, weren't they? So we've only seen the beginning of them, because it has been very swift, very sudden. It's been a move overseas. It's been a relocation. That was what the person said at the time. You're going to be relocated. This is not a word for now.
Yeah.
The time's coming. You'll be relocated overseas to a big building by the coast. Well, you can see the sea from outside our front door. So that was a couple of things, I guess, that just made it quite unusual, perhaps in comparison to normal people who just pick up and move to Spain because they've retired or whatever.
I think promises from God can be scary because when they're not happening, it's very easy to doubt them. And if you have a promise that isn't just kind of like a one thing will happen and it's very staged, when the beginning of that starts to happen, it can be even scarier because now you're in the promise. I don't know, for me, it's almost made it easier to doubt that this other stuff's going to happen. And I don't know why. Logically, that doesn't make sense. But it can be scary, like, oh my goodness, is this happening now? I think it's the human control of wanting it to happen in your time. And you see things start to happen. So you expect that the rest of it's going to happen.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't or it's delayed, it can be really frustrating and lead to anger and then, God, what's going on? Is this going to happen?
And especially for you, because I mean that's not what this episode's about, but you have had promises in your life before and you've had a long time waiting, and same with me. It seems to be a bit of a hallmark over our lives, doesn't it, that we've had to wait a long time for things that we've expected, hoped, dreamed, or have been promised that they would happen. So then just because the first part is happening, we're here, we don't know how long it's going to take for the rest. But one thing we did feel that we were supposed to do was podcast. So here we are.
That's what we're doing.
It's a little bit more difficult than we realised, but
yes,
that's okay.
It's not as easy. Well, the first, I mean, we've recorded every episode more than once.
We have, I think
but
we've done 5 now.
And we only have one that's good to use.
Although
this is the fifth, so let's hope that this one's good as well.
Let's hope. Let's hope we won't cringe too much and we'll be willing to.
But it is very tough. Very tough.
So with that, without further ado, we should probably dive into actually one of the things that we want to start talking about. One of the topics on our mind. So
go for it. Yeah.
So interesting word, church. We've both had different experiences of church, but I think one thing that has really saddened me, so therefore I've got a heart for it, is I've seen loads of young people not interested in the church or disengaged with church or never come, or if they did come, leave in droves. Not always been the case in our experience because of the communities that we've done, but that's another story. But generally speaking, and then you kind of agreeing with that. And then for me personally, I've also seen a lot of people who are older, like 20s, 30s, 50s even, my age, who have also left the church. We need to define what we mean by that, but kind of what people expect church, the building, the service, institutional church, they've left it.
Careful of that water.
Because they are, thanks.
Spilled it yesterday.
We did spill it yesterday. Just because they've been disillusioned, hurt, felt really controlled, and some of them even don't have a faith anymore because they've been so hurt by Christians or the church, and that really saddens me. So that's something I'd like to explore.
Yeah.
Hey,
nah.
I don't want to keep talking for too long. We're trying to keep this snappy. So.
No. I agree with all that, and I've come from a different place, and I found church just the most boring place to be when I was younger. When I was a kid, it was so incredibly boring. Even the kids' service, found it cringy. I struggled. I don't really like organised things. I can be a bit erratic, or have been and whatnot. But for me, I think it's more a case of I was so anxious and depressed and in pain and inconsistent and emotional in a bad way. You know, you can be in touch with your emotions and it's good, but I was emotional in a bad way. You know, anger and frustration were very prevalent. All these things for years and years and years were there. And then when I finally came back to God after utterly rejecting it, I was just set free and released kind of like from all this pain, and the longing hole I had in my heart that I was searching for fulfillment was gone. You know, that was filled. And I see a generation of my age and younger, and it just seems so many people are anxious, so many people are in pain, and it just seems really obvious to me that, well, maybe not obvious, but if you've had this healed, if you've had this fixed, you'd want to share it with as many people as possible, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
You wouldn't want to keep it to yourself. If you see someone in pain and think, I know a guy that could heal you, I know a guy that could fix these problems, I know someone that could set you free. By someone, I mean Jesus. I'm not talking about no church pastor or nothing.
It's like the healed people heal people,
Yeah.
and hurt people hurt people. So even though, you're saying it's Jesus that's behind it, you want to share that. What God's done for you, don't you?
And the only reason that I'm in a position where I would be able to get married in January is because of the work that God has done of me over this last period of time. You think about me 18 months ago, I was so far off anywhere near being able to be married. And I thought I was at that point where I could get married. You know, I'm a bit odd. I've always wanted to be married, but I was so far away from being the person that would have been ready to be a husband.
Yeah.
So selfish and inconsistent. And she went from feeling like I was so madly in love with someone for 2 weeks to then 2 weeks later feeling like I hated them almost. Didn't want anything to do with them.
Yeah.
And God healed all that, and I'm now in a position where I've been able to be consistent with the same girl for the longest period of time in my life. And our relationship's been pretty great, to be fair. There hasn't been many downs. And even the downs that we have, like sometimes they can feel extreme, but I sit there and think, compared to the downs that I used to have, this is nothing. This is normal. This is healthy. This is what relationships go through. And it's been a lot of healing in the relationship. My fiance is amazing, and she's been amazing for me. And
she'll also be coming out. You'll be able to catch
she'll be on the podcast
next
soon.
Month. Yeah, which will be exciting. Special Christmas one, maybe.
Maybe.
See how it goes.
Got some ideas. Yeah. See if we can bake and talk at the same time.
Yes. So that's kind of your angle, I guess, in terms of why you want to share stuff. And for me, I think it's just it just breaks my heart really that people might lose that relationship with Jesus, that personal relationship that they have known, the experience of him, and because of their experience with the church, feeling judged, feeling like
I might
they're
be making a lot of noise.
Oh really?
Yeah, you don't want the mic touching anything.
Oh okay.
Well, we won't know if that's
I
affected
hope
the
not,
sound
'cause
until the end.
Well, it's only been 10 minutes. Really sorry guys if that has been making a noise, but
No, we'll have to redo it if it has.
oh no. Here's hoping. Yes, so people, I mean, I've been in quite a lot of what they call charismatic churches in my time, which have been great in many ways, but there's also been failings because when you're in the term uses when you're in a happy clappy church or whatever, and everything's very positive atmosphere and people are sharing what God's done in their life all the time, the difficulty there is there are some people always who are in pain and they're really suffering, and they may have been bereaved, they may have had promises that haven't come true for them or prayers that haven't been answered, and sometimes I feel like a band-aid's like being put over that, or that's those people kind of haven't been cared for pastorally when all these great things are happening, and they've just felt like left out and like abandoned by God. This and this and this seems to be happening, all these amazing testimonies that are shared every week. What about me? And I get that, it's really important to have a culture of faith and expectation and positivity, but not at the expense of people whose whatever is happening in their life, they might be really suffering. So that's one of the things I think with churches that can be a problem and has caused people to leave. But people haven't been loved well. And so I hope that we can just acknowledge that really, even by doing something like this.
And I probably have a bit of a harsher view than you on the church. I think for normal people or people who don't go to church, I think the church has failed them. I don't think the church has failed on the whole, because the church does a lot of great things.
Yeah.
And I've certainly come to appreciate church a lot more recently. But when I think about people who are outside the church, you know, I really think the church has failed them by being too judgmental, by being too religious, by being too boring.
Yeah.
And not, you know, the biggest thing about Christianity is that God came down to meet us through Jesus where we were. And I don't think the church does a great job at going to meet people where they are.
Yeah, or they start off that way. My experience is the church is very loving and accepting at first. We love you, total grace, total love, come as you are. It doesn't matter what you believe or how you behave or whatever, just come and belong, come and be with us. But that doesn't last. I find that there still comes a point where, unless after a period of time your beliefs, your values, your behaviour is in line with that particular church's culture, there comes a point where if you then are still asking questions about faith or the way things are done or any one of a million things really, it starts to be frowned upon. And you can feel judged and you feel like you haven't got a safe space anymore to go, but why do you do that? Why do you take an offering every week? Or why can't people who believe this or that, why aren't they able to lead a small group? Or you're not allowed to ask these questions, or if you do, you know, it's just not, it doesn't feel genuine. It doesn't.
And
feel
you
like
know
a
that
safe
very well
place.
because you've had some bad experiences
Yes,
in church, being on
I have.
leadership teams. You were on the leadership team of one of the biggest churches in England
Yeah.
back in the day.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
so you've seen the good, the bad and the ugly,
I have.
all of it.
Sometimes when you're that close to something, it's not always helpful.
Mm-hmm.
So don't get me wrong. I mean, you know, 80-90% of what I've experienced in church and in big churches and from leaders, you know, people generally have good hearts, they have integrity, it's been positive. But it's when you see the damage or when you see kind of a bit of lack in some of those areas, maybe sometimes, and when you bring the challenge, even someone who was respected in the position that I was, having kind of earned my stripes really, being on a senior leadership team, you know, for years, you can still feel like that is not fully heard. And that's concerning, that's worrying. I think that, you know, people always need to be free to say what they feel and bring challenge, and for it to be heard, not to be put back on them as like, well, you're the one with the problem if you say that. I remember one of the great things that was said to me years ago was like, you know, management, which you're always asking, and the same is true of parenting, you're always saying, how could I do that better? They call it like 360-degree feedback, where you, if you're leading someone, you say to them, how can I lead you better when you do your reviews? You know, as a parent, I know we've had painful conversations, haven't we, Jordan? I failed you in this area. How could I have done that better? And I think that's quite rare. And even in churches who say that they do it, and if you've got the courage in your review to actually say something, it's still so rare to find leaders that are that humble and that secure that they are not threatened, and are genuinely still gracious and loving no matter what anyone in their congregation or on their team says to them. That, in my experience, that's rare.
Yeah.
And that's sad. That's sad.
I think it's so hard to be a leader and to keep that, really. It's so easy for human nature to like just let that inflate.
Yeah.
It's really, really difficult to stay on that level at all times.
And we've seen that, haven't we, recently with some of the situations that have happened, with people who've got like almost that celebrity status with big youth gatherings or big churches. There's been a lot over recent years where clearly these guys were not able to cope with the pressure of that. So
the enemy just always finds a way to come in. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I remember when I first became a Christian, one of the big things that was said to me was, I really feel like God is telling me to tell you, you being me, accountability. And I think you look around and you see that with a lot of church leaders there can be a lack of accountability. But I had an interesting talk with a church leader recently, and he spoke to me about some even bigger church leaders that he knows, and he said that actually in speaking to them it's very difficult for them to find that accountability, because you can't really have the dynamic where if you just have a member of the church, the church leader is being accountable to them. It doesn't really work. So you have to find people that are on the same level as you. But the higher up you go, the less people there are.
Yeah.
So it can be very, very difficult.
Yeah, I think that's
to find that
right.
accountability and have that honesty.
Yes. And when you do have that, I mean, I'm not going to share details, but even in part of the networks that I've been involved in, even when you do have that and you have someone higher up who maybe founded the movement and they're now not around, but they're still mentoring you or whatever, there's still examples, because they also need someone, and there are very real examples where those guys have also made major mistakes and fallen and destroyed the trust of a lot of people in the process.
But anyway, I say church has failed the regular people, the people that don't go to church. I think church has failed a lot of people who used to go to church and no longer go. And just the response is, they've fallen out of church. I'll pray for you, or we'll pray for them. You need to come back to church. You must be falling away. And I think it's a massive shame. It's so judgmental and self-righteous, I think.
Yes.
The way that can come across.
Yes.
But we have a heart for that, because there are people that are hungry. There are people that want more, and I think there are people that want more but don't even know what it is that they want. They're just not happy with what they have. And I think you're never going to be happy with what you have, in my opinion, until you find God, until you find Jesus.
Yeah.
That he brings that fulfillment.
And when you've got that, I think it's really important that you feel free to do the things that bring you life. So if going to a particular church every week or every couple of weeks really brings you life, fantastic. That's great. We've got nothing to say to those people, have we? That's brilliant. And also, to acknowledge that if you're not in church, traditional church is actually people anyway. The Bible defines church as people, not a building and not a service. It's a family. It's God's family. I remember going to Africa and various nations, and it's actually incredible when you meet total strangers and the only thing is that they're Christians, and yet right away there's this connection where you feel like they're your brother and they're your sister and you have so much in common without even speaking to them. It's a wonderful thing.
And I do attend church when I can. It's difficult out here. We've not found one in Spain that's great, but when I'm in England, there's a church that I go to and I enjoy it and I like it. And I see the benefit. And I see church a lot like being in a wolf pack almost. You have that support and you have that community. Now, if your group gets smaller or you start to become a lone wolf and stray out, it doesn't mean that you're going to lose your connection with God or that you're not as good, but it does make it more difficult when you don't have that support, and it makes it so much more difficult to remember. And I think remembering what God has done in your life is so key to how we view the future.
Definitely.
When you're by yourself, it's really, really easy to forget what God has done because you're not reminded and you're not supported by others.
Absolutely.
Who can provide that encouragement. So I don't want it to sound like I'm just slagging off church and saying, church is terrible. Church has amazing benefits and church can be very good. And if you love church, then love church, go to church.
But also the question is, where do you get that from? We are very fortunate in this day and age, I think, with the amount of ways that you can spiritually feed yourself. Well, the podcasts out there that have been such a blessing to you, the books you can read, the people that you can connect with from all over the world. It doesn't have to be going to a particular service on a Sunday, and missionaries have known that for years. They've often gone out where there's been nobody. It's just been a small team. And actually one good thing that was said, one of many good things that's been said in my past, was actually the smaller the group, the higher the level of discipleship, or the higher the level, for those who aren't Christians who may be listening, the higher the challenge or the ability to follow Jesus more closely and have your life challenged and transformed by people speaking into your life. That actually happens with a small group. So the large group that you go to...
Jesus did it with 12.
He did it with 12 and he had 12. A group of 3 as well.
And he kept his 12,
Yeah, exactly.
He didn't do it with 500 or try to leave 500 people at once.
Yeah.
But what he did so well was develop and equip those 12 people that then they were able to minister to thousands.
Absolutely.
They were able to reach thousands because of how closely he worked with them for 3 years.
Yeah. And when you read Acts as well, the early church were smaller, much smaller groups of people, meeting in homes, often having businesses as well in the same location. And they would sometimes go up to Jerusalem or go to a festival or whatever for the bigger gathering. But they wouldn't have been, you know, more than 20, 30 people, because none of the villas or the homes were big enough to have more than that.
Yeah.
And that's where the whole kind of missional community idea came in, where you do life together with people. And that's what I mean. If you are meeting...
That's such a common term. They're saying, oh, I can't wait to do life with you. Like, what does that mean?
Right, okay.
Such a common thing, and it's not. It's just used in all types of world right now.
Right.
Oh, I can't wait to do life with you. Can't wait to do life with my special one. I want to do, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Well, I think
what does
when
that
was
mean?
first coined, probably 20 years ago in the church context, it was about share, like the early church would share meals together and have businesses together, and it was all about doing life, not a church service.
I think it's true relationship
Yeah.
with others that are close to you within your community.
Yes.
And
Can support you, and if you're Christians, you can pray for you.
I have this conversation with my friends all the time. Well, not all the time, but it just repeatedly comes up. It's always like, oh, religion isn't for me, you know, Jordan, or, oh, are you religious? And I feel like I'm a broken record saying it's not religion, it's relationship. The very first thing that God created after he made the earth was Adam, and the relationship that he had with a human. He didn't create church, he didn't create religion. Religion was made by humans.
Yeah.
Religion is man-made. Relationship is made by God.
Absolutely.
And I think a lot of people view the church and think, oh, I could only have a relationship with God if I go to church.
Yes.
If I have a pastor, you know, a human mediator. And the whole point is that you don't have to have a human mediator. In fact, you could never ever step foot in a church ever again. Or ever. And you could have a relationship with Jesus. You don't need to be in the church. You just need to be connected to God.
Yeah.
And Bill Johnson spoke about this actually. He said that there were people, they were praying over a certain area of the world that had like no connections to God. And they prayed over it for years before they sent people there. And then they started sending missionaries. And there were people there that already knew Jesus. They called him the white man in the dreams. This white man had appeared to them in dreams because they'd already started praying. So they already knew Jesus, and they'd never heard the Bible. They'd never heard anything. They already heard God. So if Jesus can reach these people in dreams, and it was unanimous across hundreds, maybe even thousands of people who had all met this white man in dreams that knew Jesus, it's like, why would that not be the case today?
Yeah, absolutely. And you do definitely hear stories of that all over the place. And I think there is something that's happening. I think COVID...
Sorry, can I just say one more thing just quickly?
Sure.
So if you are in a position, right, you've heard this and you thought, well, what does that mean? It's all well and good. What do I do? How do I meet Jesus? You know, because that's the next question. It's all well and good if we sit here and talk, but if we don't explain to someone how they can have their own relationship with Jesus, what's the point? Just ask him.
Really simple.
Just ask him. Just say, depends how far you want to go. If you can say to him, Jesus, I want you to reveal yourself in my life. Jesus, I want to know you. God, show me that you're real. Show me that you're in my life. Even if it's once a day, you wake up, the first thing you say is, God, you know, I just want to meet you. Show me that you're real. A step further would actually be saying, do you know what, God, I don't understand this stuff, but if I'm I don't want to say the word sinner, it sounds so bad and it is quite
living
negatively.
my life independently from you.
If you just say, God, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for how I've lived. If this is the reason that I'm depressed or I'm anxious or I'm upset or things aren't going well, I don't understand, but I'm sorry. Please come into my life. That is all you have to say. And I can almost guarantee that if you say that every day, he will come into your life. In fact, I can guarantee that, because if you say it every single day for the rest of your life, he will come in. If you say it and then stop, you can always say, well, you stopped saying it. So just keep saying it every single day. It might be one time. It might be, you know, instantaneous. You hear stories on social media where people are like, God, I have fallen out with my mom. You know, I haven't spoken to her for years and I really miss her. If you're real, then please get her to call me. And then the phone rings straight away. I've seen that story from two different people asking for that same thing.
Right.
And it happens.
Yeah.
For other people, it may be over a period of time.
Yes.
But just keep going. if you ask and if you seek,
You will
then
receive. And you
you
will
will
find.
receive. Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you knock on the door will open, and that is a promise that I would bet my life on. I'd bet everything I have on that. I'm that confident that he will not ignore you
Yes.
if you ask him to come into your life.
Because I've heard one or two people, I've got some atheist friends who say they've done that. And they're clearly very anti-Christian and call it just a bunch of magic tricks and all this. But I suspect again that when they've asked, it's on their terms. Right, God, if you're real, reveal to me. But in their heart, that means what? I don't know, bolt of light, that minute.
Like,
it's not about that.
Reveal yourself to me or you're not real.
Yeah, and reveal yourself to me in the way that I want to see it, in the timing that I have, not actually genuinely like, God, I am really sincere. God always responds to a sincere heart.
Yeah, if you come humbly.
If you're humbly seeking and are genuinely open to it all being real, then I don't think God ever lets you down.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I think that was the turning point for me, because I came to absolute rock bottom. I came to a place of such pain where I was like, clearly I've tried it the other way and it's not worked. These lies that I have believed, you can do everything by yourself, you follow your heart, it makes you happy. Life's too short not to be happy, or all these things, and having that kind of guide my life led me to a place of such pain that eventually I was like, I'm so sick of this. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. I don't care. God, I'm just sorry.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the turning point, and that was when my life started to change. And it's been a gradual process since then. It's not like it was just overnight. For some people it will be just overnight. For me, it wasn't.
Oh no, your story was come to Jesus and feel like crap.
Shite.
I was going to say that. I don't know if I could really say that.
You can say shite.
Come to Jesus and feel like shite. That's
Yeah.
Jordan's story, not come to Jesus and everything will be great. I think we touched on that last time, didn't we? But you really went through it. I remember
I felt terrible for months and months
totally
and months.
did. I remember you coming to me at one point and saying, Mum, if it is this hard to be a Christian, if I'm going to feel this terrible, I really don't know that I can do this. Is this normal? And I'm like, well, in my experience, no. How long is it going to go on? I don't know.
I felt worse than I'd felt before.
You did.
Felt worse than I'd felt before, so I was so confused. And then even after I went through that initial freedom, which if you're wondering or you want to hear all about that, it's in the first episode. I go into detail so you can listen there. Even after that freedom, then I started to mess up again. I'm going to say mess up in, what's this, asterisks? Mess up in asterisks, which I have found was in my head. That distance that I felt from God was created by me. He didn't move. I kind of fabricated this distance. But even after that, I went through tough times. I remember December last year, December and January were tough. February was tough. The day before I met Jesse was really, really tough. Really tough. I still had some difficult times, and it's only kind of recently I've got through to a more stable place with God, which has created so much more stability in my life.
Yeah.
But it was a long process.
Yes.
But just to encourage, not everyone will go through such a long process. It's not like that for everyone. It can be instantaneous.
Yeah.
And it can not be. I think God gives you what you need to prepare you for your future journey. He knows that if an instantaneous change is going to be right for you, then that's what you'll get. And he knows that if there's a journey,
there's some things you've had to learn through process, haven't you?
I've learned so much.
Said, at the time you've been like, why is this happening? This is terrible. Why is it so hard? But then a couple of months later you've said, do you know what? I'm glad that happened, Mum, because it taught me this, this and this.
I learned so much.
Yeah.
And a massive thing. Do you remember my Psalm 62 story?
Go on, say it.
I know, I'm not going to get into that now because it's a whole thing, and I'd want to read out the facts that I had. But
all those different scriptures,
all the different numbers,
stuff,
and how the period of pain that I was going through was 62 days, and the psalm that I was reading that day when I was crying with you on August the 11th, you gave me Psalm 62. And there's loads of numbers that lined up. I'll go through it one day when I have it all in front of me, but it was crazy. And I only saw that in, I think it was March or April. So when I looked back and saw that time, it was like, God, he knew the time that I would be in all this pain, and still used that to show me that in the future, he was there and in control the whole time. that it was for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
And I learned so many lessons. And actually that period of time was what gave me the unshakable faith, which I'd been asking for.
You were actually pinging off the wall when you came and said, I've got to show you this about this 62 days thing. I remember you were like,
it
God,
blew my mind.
And particularly because you were quite interested in
I am
numbers and the
interested in
significance of numbers, which we
biblical numbers,
haven't particularly been into except for like 7 and 3, you know, the obvious. But yeah, that was amazing. And you were like, God knew, because he knew your interest, he knew that particular thing was going to blow your mind. And you were like, this is insane. Only God could have known this or done this. I remember that. It was a huge thing.
It was, yeah. It was incredible. It kind of makes me want to tell the story now.
Well, how long have we got? Let's see. It's 2:30, so...
Yeah, we've got
a 45-minute podcast, you've probably got about 10, 15 minutes.
It's not that long, but have you got anything that you want to say?
No, hey, we'll go with the
No,
flow,
I need to go grab my book, so talk to them while I go grab my book.
Oh my gosh. Right.
Pressure.
Okay.
Okay, I'm going to take my mic off, so sorry if there's any sound there.
That's okay.
Just speak monologue. Pretend you're talking to me.
Oh no, this is interesting. Okay, I don't really want to go off topic and talk about something else that isn't relevant. I guess what I can say while I'm sitting here is just, the transformation that there's been in Jordan over the last 18 months has been amazing. And that is a testimony of itself.
And it's for everyone. It's for absolutely everyone. It's not just for me.
But for me and Dad, having witnessed it and watched it, it has kind of re-enlivened the faith of the whole family, because we've all been able to share in this journey, and just to see how God has used Jordan to come to us and say and question things and challenge things and ask things has been amazing. It's just had a great effect, and that's really part of the reason we're all here together as well, isn't it? Is because of what's happened in your life, and now it feels like a whole family call and a family ministry, which is just so wonderful in terms of how God can restore things, and proper prodigal son story of
something I was thinking the other day is I was actually realising how I view myself has changed.
Right.
You know, for years and years and years, I believed myself to be damaged. I believed myself to be like dark. We're just watching the films. I always identified with the villains more. I wanted to be the villain. I saw myself as the villain, and believed that I was better off alone. So I had such a negative view of myself. I did not view myself as light. You know, I was the one that would go to the extreme measures to get something done, you know, put myself through pain. Probably, I've been told by therapists and psychologists that I believe that I deserve to be in pain, and this is why I'd self-sabotage and stuff. But now I sat there, I was just walking the other day, and I was like, I don't see that anymore.
That's great.
I don't believe I'm dark anymore. I believe that I can be light, and that actually I'm good, and that my heart is good, and I want the best for people. It was really great to see.
Quite a revelation,
Yeah. So, Psalm 62 story, 11th of August, okay, was kind of like the day when I really gave my life to God, so to say. We'll go into detail more about that one day.
That wasn't this August, it was the one before, wasn't it?
It's 11th of August 2023. And I was so... For those of you that haven't listened to the last episode, again, I would encourage you to go listen to it, because it covers it there. But I'd come out of this really lustful, toxic relationship. And my problem in that situation in the past is that I would always go back. I just couldn't stay away from it, you know. And even if I knew it was right to break up with someone, I would break up with them and then be weak and go back just because I was hurting. And this was the first time that I didn't, because I believed that this wasn't God's best. And you took me to work that day.
Yeah.
We're meeting with someone, a Christian, in the evening, and you saw how much pain I was in. You know, there'd been a build up to this day, and it was a big spiritual build up in my opinion, because the pain kind of started before. But on that day, you took me, Jordan, come to work with me, okay? Which, you know, I think I was 23 at the time, probably not something that most 25-year-olds want to admit, that at 23 their mum had to bring them to work because she was scared.
And we run our own business, so at least we could
so
do
I
it.
came, that you brought me there because you thought I might do something silly, or
I did.
run back to this girl.
Yeah.
And again, I don't really cry. It's very, very rare that I cry. But I was in absolute tears this day. I couldn't stop crying. It was probably the most upset I've ever been, bar the day when my first dog died, Rip Kaiser. But you took me there and you gave me this psalm. Obviously it's Psalm 62. Can you remember the psalm?
Is this the my soul find rest in God alone one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The first verse is, truly my soul finds rest in God. My salvation comes from him.
Phew, I'm glad I could remember that.
Yeah. And so there were these 4 verses. Verse 1, truly my soul finds rest in God. My salvation comes from him. Verse 2, truly he is my rock and my salvation. He is my fortress. I will not be shaken. Verse 6, truly he is my rock and my salvation. He is my fortress. I will not be shaken. So that's a repeat from verse 2. And Psalm 8, trust in him at all times, you people. Pour out your hearts to him, for God is our refuge. So the whole psalm isn't just a repeat. Those 4 verses just repeat, which is really, really interesting. And I worked out that from the 11th of August to the 12th of October was 62 days. I went online and checked out. It was 62 days. 62 days. It was also 8 weeks and 6 days and 2 months and 1 day, which corresponds to the verses that are here in the that I've written down.
That was a particularly crazy part.
Which was crazy. So 62 days is also 8 weeks and 6 days, or 2 months and 1 day. So 8, 6, 2 and 1, which is why I went and looked up those specific verses. Now, what I had struggled with at the time was truly not trusting God, because I had still decided that if I wanted to have sex before marriage with whichever woman I would meet, that would be better, because I'd done it so much, it didn't make sense to just stop now, what was the point? And that when I found this woman or whatever, that I would then decide if I was going to wait. So I was still deciding not to trust in him at all times, pour out my heart to him, and realize that God was my refuge. This was the big thing. And so during this time, this is what I learned. And when I had that big moment of realization on the 12th and said to God, listen, God, I'm sorry, I trust you. See, I froze now.
That's all right.
I've not rehearsed this story. So yeah, it was in that moment when I actually decided, right, God, I am trusting you. I said to him, I don't know why you do it this way, but I'm choosing to trust you because your way means that I wouldn't have been in pain. And so the very first verse in that order, 8, 6, 2, 1, which corresponds to 8 weeks, 6 days, 2 months, 1 day, which is the same as 62 days. So Psalm 62, verse 8, trust in him at all times, you people, pour out your hearts to him, for God is our refuge. So that was the lesson that I needed to learn, that truly he is my rock and my salvation. He is my fortress and I will not be shaken. During this period of time, I had asked for a testimony and a moment of realization that would create a fortress that could never be shaken. And now I talk about a faith that I have because of this moment in particular, that my faith in God cannot be shaken because what was done that night was completely impossible and unexplainable. Then it repeats again, truly he is my rock and my salvation. He is my fortress, I will not be shaken. So something important to know is that when you read the Bible, if something is repeated, it means pay attention. It's the rule of twos. If God ever speaks to you in twos, like you read a Bible verse and then someone comes and says that same thing to you, which happens all the time in church, God's saying pay attention. When you're reading the Bible, if something is repeated, God is saying pay attention, this is important. So when I saw this, and these are the only 2 verses in the entire psalm that repeat each other, and I saw that they were next to each other, I was like, whoa, okay, this is beyond, statistically to me, beyond impossible. And then the last verse, that truly my soul finds rest in God, my salvation comes from him. When I learned the very first verse, Psalm 8, to trust in him at all times, pour out my heart to him, for God is my refuge, I was able to understand, truly my soul finds rest in God, my salvation comes from him, because the day after that, I was at complete rest. I felt like I had really found my salvation, and that, yeah, truly my soul finds rest in God. When I decided to trust him at all times and do it his way, I was set free. Went from being depressed, in pain, crying, to completely set free. The most joyous I had ever been in my life.
Yeah, it's amazing.
And that verse number 8 is actually the same verse that I have on my cross, which is Proverbs 3:5-6.
Pretty much the same sentiment, isn't
Yeah,
it?
which is trust in the. Oh my days, I've blanked. I know this is absolutely off by heart.
Trust in the Lord, and isn't it? He will make your path straight.
That's
Lean
the
not on
second
your
bit.
own understanding, and He will make your path straight.
Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding.
Yeah. In all
your ways acknowledge Him, and He will make your path straight. Wow, that is embarrassing that I did not know that off by heart.
It's all right.
I just froze. I get nervous and especially when it's
Absolutely.
kind. And this isn't public, but people may be listening.
I
I
hope
froze.
so.
Yeah, I do know that verse. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that verse again was the same thing, which when I had asked God for a Bible verse during that time, that was the verse He gave me. That was the verse I have on my cross. That was the verse I have on my arm. And it was exactly the same, repeated twice.
Mm-hmm.
So when I saw this and thought, if I were to work out the probable statistics of that happening, and it being the lessons that I needed to learn in the order that I needed to learn them with a recurring theme, I was like, that is impossible. It's absolutely impossible. Like I'd love someone to sit down and try and rationalize it to me, because there's even more to the story which I don't have time to sit there and read. But
yeah, and some people. I mean, I know,
crazy.
can think of someone right now who would try and rationalize it. But the point is, even if they do want to try and do that, God knows you. He knows what excites you. He knows what was going to be really meaningful for you, and that's what He gave you and did for you, because He knew you needed it. And it
I'd
would
love
really
to sit there
reveal
and try
yourself to
and
Him.
talk to someone about rationalise it though. Just saying, well, what are the chances, number one, that it took me 62 days to be set free when that was the psalm you gave me on day one? What are the chances of that? That must be low.
Yeah, even that's
Then
very
what
cool.
are the chances that 62 days is also 8 weeks and 6 days, and verse 8 was the exact lesson that He was trying to teach me?
Mm-hmm.
That then there was a recurring theme about Him being my fortress and my rock, which is something I had prayed for. Give me a testimony, give me a rock to stand on that can never be shaken during the difficult times.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like He's speaking back to me. I am your rock, I am your fortress.
Absolutely.
Your faith in me will never be shaken because of what I'm doing in you right now.
Yeah.
And I didn't even realise that that's what He was doing, because all I could see was my pain. And this is dated March 18th. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't until March 18th when I started looking into these numbers that I saw all of this stuff, and it made so much sense.
Yeah.
And then the final lesson that I needed to learn, which was 2 months and 1 day. So that number 1 correlates to the final day in the 62 days. So on the end day, truly my soul found rest in God, and I understood that my salvation comes from Him.
Amazing.
How is that possible? It's impossible. There's no way. How could someone sit there and rationalize it? I don't get it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't get it. How could I pop that back to him? If there is a mathematician or anything that can kind of put the odds of that into a calculator or know a formula for it, please do it and let me know, because I would love to know the numerical or statistical odds, whatever it is, of that actually happening.
Mm-hmm. And do you know what another cool thing about that psalm is? I don't know if you know this story or not, just quickly, because we've got to end now. But that was also, Psalm 62 was very meaningful for me when I was in my 20s.
That's why He gave it to me. That's what you said on the day.
Right, okay. The first time we were in Seville, where I experienced a lot of sort of character assassination, a situation which has happened a couple of times, and I think is very common when you're growing in leadership. Yeah, and God gave me that. It's the first time I'd read it. And I meditated, my soul finds rest in God alone. My reputation and my honour come from Him.
And I read that every single day for like those 62 days pretty much as well.
Yeah.
And once again, our lives are just proving
how
really similar
meaningful for us
they
as
are.
a family, hasn't it? Just certain psalms, certain scriptures are really, really powerful.
And just quickly, last thing. So I think a lot of people struggle with, oh, what's it like reading the Bible? Like, how do you know when God's speaking to you? This is God speaking to me through the Bible, reading these verses and seeing what He has done in my life in His Word. That is an example of sitting down, reading the Bible, realising something that's happened that's just incredible and going, oh my goodness, and God, you're speaking to me through these words.
And Jesus is also called the Word. Mm-hmm. And the wonderful thing about the Bible is it is living and active. It's not just something that you read, is it? When you meditate on God's word. And I think often it's even more powerful if it's just a verse or a psalm or a truth. If you meditate on that and repeat it and
by meditate, what do you
ingest
mean,
it,
just quickly?
reflect on it, read it, think
Repeat
about
it every day,
it,
think about it, not just sat there for a 15-minute meditation doing
yeah.
that. Like meditate means feed yourself.
Take it in, look at it from different
think
angles.
about it all the time, yeah.
Lectio Divina is something we can talk about in the future, a way of just really reflecting deeply on something. When you do that, it literally transforms your life. Those truths transform your life.
And once again, God's protections are not restrictions. They are in fact that. They are protections.
Yeah.
I don't know what to call them. Rules, guides, lines.
Well, it's encouragements and promises as well.
God's instructions are not restrictions. They are protections. And that realization was what set me free and allowed me to look at a relationship with God in a completely different light.
Yeah.
So hopefully that's helpful for just one person out there.
Absolutely. And wherever you're at today in terms of church, just be encouraged that Jesus loves you, the Holy Spirit, God the Father, they are there. Whether you're in church or not, they're real, and they want you to know that they'll never leave you or forsake you, and that direct relationship with them, they are still relevant and still want to be part of your life, guiding you, blessing you.
You can have that direct relationship with God right now. You can end this podcast. You can say, God, I want you to, please reveal yourself in my life. I want to know who you are. I mean it. I'm sincere. I'm coming to you humbly.
Yeah.
And you can go a step further by saying, if the reason that I'm struggling or feel this way is because of something I don't understand, I'm sorry, but I want to know you. Amen. So yeah, I pray anyone out there who is feeling that God does reveal himself to you.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I think that's a wrap.
I think
we'll
that's
have
a wrap.
to finish there, yeah.
Let's hope this one is okay enough to put out there. If you're watching it, then we thought it was good enough.
So yeah, thank you for listening. Feel free to share this with friends, family, or anyone that you think may need it. You can follow us on our Instagram at Our Home Podcast. Yeah, it's not .com on Instagram. It's just at Our Home Podcast. Thank you. We'll see you next time.